It is time for the highest level of Zerg vs Zerg that I have ever covered on this YouTube channel. I am a massive fan of both of these players, and spawning in the top right corner we have none other than Dark. And his opponent, spawning in the bottom left corner of Daybreak Alley, is going to be none other than Solar. Now, like I said, I'm a huge fanboy of these two players, and the reason for that is that they are widely regarded as the very best as well as the second best Zerg in the world right now. Solar may just be, statistically speaking, a little bit weaker in overall rankings in StarCraft 2. He has been extremely successful throughout all of his career. Still a very young guy as well, very nice guy. But he ended up winning 3 DreamHacks so far, and he's also won an SSL. His opponent became second. He was the runner-up during the BlizzCon Grand Finals this year. He also won an SSL, and he's also the Cross Finals champion for 2016. Now, in case you are unfamiliar with those tournaments, these are all premier tournaments that I just named off. Both have countless of second places, both have a ton of online cup victories, and both are just extremely good at this game. And I mean, while there have been Zerg players in the past throughout, you know, the history of StarCraft 2, so to say, these guys have been around for a while, and while they may have needed some time before they got into this level that they are at right now, they are far better than any of the Zerg players we have seen in history, at the very least in StarCraft 2. So, enough fanboying for me. Let's watch this. So, in case you are unfamiliar, this is indeed going to be a best of 3. So I'm going to be casting the entire series that these two players played in this one video right here. Now, of course, this is Zerg vs Zerg, and this is all played in the new patch. Now, ZVZ, throughout most of Legacy of the Void, has been a relatively aggressive matchup, and with relatively, I mean the most aggressive matchup in all of StarCraft 2 right now. There's been a ton of Ling Bane harass, there's been a ton of aggression in general, and obviously while we do see mid-game transitions every now and then, for the most part, it all comes down to control in the earlier stages of the game. So, as you can see right here on the production tab, the games are already looking very similar. Production tabs are basically identical right now for both players, except that apparently Solar is going for 2 additional Zerglings. Both players decided to go for the hatchery into the gas geyser into the spawning pool. The Zergling speed is on the way right now for Solar, and he decided to pull 2 drones out of gas. Let's have a quick look. On the other side of the map, it turns out that Dark is actually not doing so just yet. That is rather interesting. Usually, if you go for the 4 Zerglings as well as the drone pool out of the gas, you're planning to go for a very quick 3rd base, and that's exactly what Solar is doing right now. It's gonna allow him to get a ton more units out a little bit later on into the game, but Dark, obviously with the perfect Overlord positioning on Daybreak Alley, is gonna find out that this expansion is up very early on, and indeed, he's gonna be following it up with his own drone as well. Now, of course, he's had some extra gas here for a little while, meaning that he is indeed, and a Zergling actually ends up falling there. Ooh. He is indeed going to be able to get himself that Baneling's Nest a little bit earlier on into the game, but I would not be surprised if we see something very similar here from Solar very shortly. As you can see, he already decided to put the drones back into the gas geyser, and while he's not throwing down any tech buildings just yet, he instead decided to just go for a massive influx of Zerglings right now. Knowing that his opponent's 3rd base is up, this means that there's a ton of room here to start dealing damage, if he so chooses to. Dark, meanwhile, decided to go for a sneaky little morphin right here with the Banelings. Could potentially be grabbing some of these reinforcing Zerglings if he is not being careful. But finally, we do see that choice of tech right here for Solar. He's got that Roach Warren going up, and here is the skirmish. Here is what Zerg vs Zerg is so very well known for. Tons and tons of aggression, and while technically speaking on paper, Solar has a stronger win rate in the Zerg vs Zerg matchup than his opponent, it all comes down to the control. If you manage to control better than your opponent, you're gonna be able to obtain that victory, and with a nice little run by there, Dark ends up picking a ton of those Zerglings off. That was a very cheeky move, allowing him to just simply catch his opponent off guard and grab a ton of those units. At the same time, a couple of roaches are currently in the production tab, and they're gonna be able to start hopefully warding away these roaches or these Banelings rather of his opponent. Now obviously there is no Baneling nest right now for Solar, so he needs to be extremely careful with his positioning, and this 3rd base is actually under a ton of pressure right now, and it may very well end up falling. The Ravager is being morphed in right now, last second cancel, but the 3rd base is already gone. The 3rd base is already gone. At the same time though, Dark is going for his own Roach Warren. He's starting to start making a couple of drones here as well to try and get a bigger economy out, but at the same time, he still has a significant amount of Zerglings out on the map. There's a couple of roaches here ready to defend that third base. Zerglings being split off to try and take out that one Baneling there. Obviously needs to be extremely careful, because if he loses more than he needs to, it's going to be very difficult for him to hold on. Dark, meanwhile, decides to go for a significant amount of roaches. He does have a slight economy lead right now, as you can see. There is 36 versus 37 Harfests, but the 36 are going to be spread out over more bases. Once again, going for the Morphin here, using that armor of the Morphing in Ravagers to get a little bit more sustain on them, and he does indeed manage to save those roaches, and he also gets the units out. Now, the Overlord is going to be under fire, immediately being moved away. Obviously, losing an Overlord at this point in the game would be very, very rough. Third base just about to be retaken here. It's already about, yeah, I would say probably about 80% or so done. And I wonder if Dark is going to allow this base to go up. He's actually going to go for a ton of Zerglings. And he also does have a couple of Ravagers morphing in. He may very well use those for defense while pushing with the rest of his army. Queen actually caught off guard here. He does have a significant chunk of army though, right around the corner. But the Queen a little bit too far out, trying to chase down that one Overlord, and the Overlord survives, whereas the Queen ends up falling. But here, all of Dark's units are gathering. So you can see a ton more army supply here for Dark in general, 58 versus 45, and I wonder what Solar is going to do here. It will come down to how well he manages to control versus those Banelings, as well as how well he manages to micro his army in general against the massive influx of Zerglings. Looks like the Zerglings are going to be trying to slip into the main base. The Zerglings, however, off Solar, already waiting right there in the corner, but Dark, meanwhile, manages to get himself in a super nice setup. Good splitting on the drones, does not get a huge surround just yet. Trying to move in right now with the Zerglings to surround all of the roaches and Ravagers of Dark, but GG is already called, and Dark ends up picking up the victory. Now, before we jump into game 2, I just want to very quickly show you the Baneling connection that allowed Dark to get such a nice lead. And there we go. The Banelings closed in from the back, killing off a lot of these Zerglings, and from there on out, Dark just simply did not give up that advantage that he established for himself. So here we go, game number 2 on Overgrowth. Spawning in the bottom left corner, we got none other than Solar, and his opponent spawning in the top right is going to be none other than Dark, who is currently up 1-0. But hold that thought, because look at that. On the production tab, we don't see a whole lot right here out of Solar. This is so typically Solar, okay? It's a best of 3. He's 1-0 behind. You better go for the cheese. He decides to go for the 12 spawning pool here. He is going to add on a couple of workers right now. We'll more than likely draw it up until about 14 or so and then go for the Overlord next. But it all depends right now on what Dark wants to do. Obviously, Dark, very well known for playing his own macro style, right? He loves going hatch a gas pool, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does so in this particular instance as well. And as you can see, that drone already making its way towards the natural. It is going to be taking it very, very early on into the game. And while it looks like Solar, whoa, is he going to go for the expo? That makes no sense. I was gonna say, maybe it was just trying to, patrol it there in case his opponent decided to go for the drone scout. Obviously, Dark could just simply be scouting the natural to see if it would go up. But instead, we do see the Zerglings go up, and eventually, I would not be surprised if Solar indeed does take the expansion. That little patrol there was such a sneaky little move. Obviously, there's a ton of mind games going on between these two players as well, because they do find each other's, they find each other's games in tournaments very often, and they've studied each other's games all the time for sure as well. There's no doubt about that. If they would get, their hands on their own replays, of replays of each other rather, they're obviously going to be studying it, as they are simply the greatest Zerg on the planet right now. Now, this Overlord did not quite spot the incoming influx of Zerglings just yet, and it seems like so far Dark is completely, well, I wasn't gonna make a pun of this, but he's completely in the dark about what's going on. More and more Zerglings actually on the production tab right now. Queen about halfway done as well. No gas guys or follow-up yet, so it looks like he's just simply going to try and snipe this hatchery here in the earlier stages of the game. Not going to go for the main base, knowing that the spawning pool will be done right about right now. He's just simply going to try and pick off that natural, and if Dark wants to save this, he's going to have to pull drones. That's exactly what he's going to do. He ends up pulling about 8 or so of them to try and hold on to this natural, but these links were very, very early on. Look at that, the 12 pool. Extremely early, and it definitely does allow him to pick up this natural. I hope he gets all of his Zerglings out if he wants to stay in this game, and it looks like so far he managed to do so just fine. Dark did decide to actually cancel out into that Baneling nest and goes for the Zergling speed here instead, having only 2 workers left over in gas. Still a little bit of skirmishing going on just to try and see whatever he can pick up. Obviously, ideally, he would try and get the worker here as well. Very, very cheeky, but I gotta say, I gotta hand it here to Solar for being so very cheeky with his early opening. Even though he knows he's 1-0 behind, right? If you are 1-0 behind and you go for a 12 pool, that really does show confidence, because if his opponent would have just simply gone for the gas geyser very early on and the spawning pool, he would have been completely taken off guard, and there was no way that he would even be able to stay in this game past like the 4-minute mark. Now in the meantime, Solar has established his own natural. He's getting a lot of queens, already has 3 out right now. Gonna be able to start up his mining of gas here very shortly. I wonder if he's even planning on getting the Zergling speed right now. May just jump straight into the Roach Warren if he wants to do so. And at the same time, Dark taking a bit of a risk as well. Knowing that his opponent's Zergling speed will more than likely be very late, he decides to go for the 3rd hatchery very, very early on. And he's actually forced to transfer workers early because his main is already fully saturated. 1 drone left over in gas, gonna be pulling them back into the gas geyser right now. But such greedy player from Solar, wow. Not having any kind of defenses out right now, and while he does have solid overworld vision, so he sort of knows exactly what's, you know, going on as far as the expansions go, he does also know that Zergling speed will be finishing up very shortly, and I guess he is eventually going to be getting himself the kill on his own creep tumor, but more importantly the Roach Warren and the evolution chamber. Apparently that creep tumor in the way. He's going to be spreading a ton of creep here as well. Would not be surprised if he's going to very soon make his way towards the 3rd base too. Now he did decide to go for the Zergling speed after all, but at the same time Link speed is already done for Dark, and he's going to be moving across the map. Now this is indeed a full wall off, okay? Like, the queens are going to be able to plug those holes, so to say, where they're going to be able to just simply hang out here in the wall and make sure that the Zerglings cannot get into the natural for free. At the same time, the 2nd evolution chamber going up right now as well, and I actually quite like this. Like, obviously, this little split here may look awkward, but it means that if his opponent wanted to go for a Baneling bust or something, that's gonna just simply make it more difficult, as both of these queens will have transfuses available and just keep each other alive for a little while longer. Whereas if they would be clumped up, it's much more difficult to keep them both alive. And right now, at the very least, one of them would survive in that instance. Now, a lot of units are moving across the map here for Dark. Dark is finishing up a lot of his army, whereas Link speed is just about to finish here for Solar. And it looks like Solar does know exactly what's coming by scouting with the Overlord. He sees that his opponent is planning to go all in, and we'll see whether or not this wall is ending up worth it. He decided to, I think he actually must have cancelled. Yeah, he actually ended up cancelling the missile upgrade in the evolution chamber, trying to save whatever resources he can, because he knows if he manages to defend this, he's gonna be in a fine position. A lot of queens out as well. Spine crawlers about to finish up already, and they are more than likely going to be enough to hold onto this aggression with relative ease. I don't really see exactly what Dark could do. Now, obviously, if he could pick up with this Roach Warren, that would be a very nice win, and it looks like he's indeed going to be able to do so. I guess that's a risk of putting the Roach Warren right here in the front. He's not going to finish it off just yet. Very, very cute move, trying to bait out the healing out of the queens here, and instead brings down all of the buildings to low HP to break the wall in literally just a split second. It looks like the time has arrived. He was baiting here for a very long time, but at the same time, a lot of Zerglings were produced here for Solar, using that early game economy to his advantage as well as the defender's advantage, and the Link speed probably came unexpected there. It's not a very common follow-up. Most of the time, you're just gonna switch full-time into Roaches, and as you can see, it completely paid off for Solar in this match. He's gonna be following it up with a lair eventually. He's also finally getting additional gas geysers, but for the most part, he's just smelling blood. He wants to go for the victory. More and more units going down right now, but he does decide to make a couple of workers once again. He does decide to make a couple of workers, knowing that his opponent's production will be very, very significant as well. Currently, it's 28 versus 33 workers in favor of Solar, but all of Solar's units are right now caught across the map. There's no Glio reconstitution on either of these sets of Roaches just yet, nor are there any upgrades, so these Roaches are going to have a hard time to deal with Zerglings in general. Once the +1 missile finishes up, it makes it significantly easier, trying to target fire down that third base as well, but it's still alive, and it looks like for the moment, Dark is going to be able to push back all of his opponent's units, and Well, the lair is finished. The Roach Warren in extremely low HP. So is this evolution chamber, but it looks like he doesn't really care, as he's simply just gonna defend on top of this ramp instead and shield his opponent away from all of these valuable tech buildings. Now, Glio Reconstitution on the way right now, +1 missile, about to finish up here, but the same goes for Dark. Dark still has that third base up. If we have a quick look in the worker count though, it really does tell the full story here. 43 workers right now for Solar versus only 27. So that does mean that Dark needs to do something if he wants to stay in this game. He needs to finish up a massive push that deals crippling amounts of damage if he plans to stay in this game, because this amount of workers is just too much for him to hold on with. But he does have a significant amount of army supply. Look at that. He does have a very, very massive army. Cute little run by trying to be attempted right now. Neither player really wants to fight, and obviously Solar, the longer he can hold on with his economy, the more stuff, the more units he's just simply going to be able to create here. He's just about to finish up his own missile upgrade as well as roach speed. Missile upgrade indeed did just finish, and that's huge. That makes it so that these roaches will be able to two-shot the Zerglings of his opponent because they have got no armor upgrades, rather than taking 3 hits on them instead. And it looks like Dark, being a little bit indecisive here, decided not to push up just yet and goes for a couple of Ravagers first before making the move. And this is all valuable time. I mean, there's a significant worker advantage for Solar. The more time goes by, the more supply will go in his favor. And look at that supply count already. Much more army supply now for Solar as well. And he's just going to simply keep on producing more and more units. 14 roaches there on the production tab. And he's even feeling confident enough that he's going to go off creep and try and simply just engage his opponent. He knows he just finished up the upgrades. He's going to try and set up a nice little surround here with all of the reinforcing roaches as well. And with a nice little bit of micro, indeed, Dark is forced to GG out of the game. And Solar picks up game number 2. Well, there we have it, the final match for today. It is currently 1-1 in the best of 3, and it's going to be none other than Solar spawning in the bottom right corner of Newkirk Precinct, and his opponent, I guess you guessed it by now, it is going to be Dark. Now, this is a best of 3, right? So effectively, at this point, it has been reduced to a best of 1, but I wonder what Dark is thinking. Do you think that Solar has scared him into, you know, going for the pool first this time around? I mean, he cheesed when he was 1-0 behind, right? And it ended up paying off. He took a huge risk though, because obviously if his opponent would have just simply gone for a pool first in the previous game on Overgrowth, he would have just lost the game right then and there, and it's one of the most standard builds that you do see in Zerg vs Zerg. But it looks like Dark, not being flustered by it whatsoever, just goes for the hatchery first, and so do we see the exact same thing for Solar, going for the quick expansion and really try and build up that early game economy. Now, of course, he could just be using these expos just simply for the amount of larva, but as you can see by the production tab, both players just mostly mirroring their strategies. It's kind of funny, it's kind of creepy really to see. I mean, these spawning pools as well, exactly at the same time. Hatcheries at practically the same time. Drones as a follow-up at exactly the same time. This is what happens, guys. Like, I hear a lot of people ask about build orders, right? It's like, hey, what's the most optimal build order? Well, if you're not sure what to do, right? Just simply look extremely closely to games like this one and note what these guys are doing. I mean, these are practiced and true build orders that will be the most efficient for the given scenario. Now, of course, in tournaments, pro gamers will sometimes cut corners, right? And they really try and get a lead by simply not playing the most defensive and well-rounded style. But in Zerg vs Zerg, you almost have, you know, only a handful of builds to really go for, because there's so much different kind of aggression happening in the earlier stages of the game in particular. But anyway, so question is Solar, yeah, he's once again going for the 4 Zerglings here. He did decide to pull the drones out of the gas once again. I wonder if we're gonna see something similar here for Dark. No, he's still leaving the gas, or the drones into the gas guys right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if Solar goes for the 3rd command center, or the 3rd hatchery rather. He wishes he could make orbital commands. No, he's probably gonna go for the 3rd hatchery here relatively early on into the game. There we do indeed see that drone move down once again. And I wonder if he's planning to follow it up with a Roach Warren again, or if he is gonna go into the Baneling Nest instead. It's kind of interesting, like both players actually favoring a slightly different style. Dark just going for the later expansion, but for the earlier Baneling Nest instead. A little bit safer in that regard. I guess it's mostly just a matter of preference at this point. He's trying to pull that drone as well to make it fight. As you can see, obviously, 4 links versus 4 links plus a drone will obviously win for the one with the drone, because they do a little bit of damage. But the third eventually does end up going down there for Dark. Now, Solar, once again, going for a massive influx here with a ton of Zerglings. Both players just about to finish up Zergling speed, and we still do not see a Baiting Nest follow-up. No, he's just going straight for the Roach Warren once again. Very interesting. Not something we have seen a whole lot, you know, in the Zerg vs Zerg matchup in general. And I guess it must be something that Solar has been practicing a ton. Look at that cute little bit of micro. That was so difficult. Neither player losing a Zergling there just because they're a little bit too good for that. He's going to morph him into a Baiting Nest, which will obviously bring that unit back to full HP. Now, as long as Solar controls well, he's going to be able to do a lot of damage with this build, but it all comes down to his control. Once again, these Banes, they can do so much damage, in particular when there's an obstacle on the map that makes it very difficult to spot where the Banes are currently located. But, of course, the Roach Warren follow-up for Dark going down right now as well. Question is, though, will he have enough to defend against Solar's Zergling? There's a lot right now. There's a lot of Zerglings. Neither player following it up with any kind of economy just yet. Solar does have a slight lead because he did, you know, obviously end up cutting out that Roach Warren, which very quickly comes into play. You can see, like, Roach Warrens definitely are not the cheapest of cheapest buildings. And he managed to run around his opponent right now. Now, at the same time, though, a lot of the army here for Dark has decided to turn around and try and face his opponent instead. Baneling going down, picking off a couple of the Zerglings here on Dark side of the map. And it looks like, at the very least for the moment, Solar is still defending. Will this base go down, though? It's so extremely low. 28 HP. I don't think it's enough. It was not enough. Dark keeps that base alive with just a handful of HP. Now, it looks like the Roaches are on the prowl in the meantime. He does not want to give up this base for free. The Overlord is going to spot that all of the Zerglings have indeed returned home. But at this point, I would have to hand it to Dark to hold on to that expansion. It's going to be extremely difficult as there are a lot of Roaches out already. At the same time, though, Dark has got his own reasonable amount of Roaches out. And if you have a quick look at the comparison here, there are 11 Roaches for Dark, or 11 for Solar, rather, and 7 for Dark. But obviously, the defender's advantage is very significant here as well. A couple of Roaches actually being sent home at this point in time as well. And it looks like he's just simply going to try and pick off the expansion. But if it goes like this, if he's giving out all of these Zerglings, that is not worth it. I mean, maybe he keeps the Overlord alive, just barely, and actually survive with 9 HP. At this point, he is forcing the run by and forcing the counterattack here from Dark. He is going to be able to get himself a Ravager Cocoon. The Ravager is going to be quite helpful to try and zone these units, but Solar will need to hold on for dear life right now. As you can see, he's been making a ton of work. It's currently 39 versus 28. If he manages to hold on here, he will be in a huge advantage. And he's obviously producing a ton of units as well. But is there enough here for Dark to break through his opponent's forces? And so far, it looks like there is a significant army lead when it comes to this engagement. Nice little bit of micro, dodging all of the splash damage here from the Banelings. The Queen's obviously helping out a lot as well. And slowly but surely, I have to say, Solar is looking like he's holding on to this engagement. But the reinforcements are joining in right now. They're trying to deal whatever damage they can. A couple of Roaches shooting away at the hatchery, not helping out in this engagement at all. Corrosive Bile does take out another morphing in Ravager. But so far, Solar holding on by the skin of his teeth, but with a huge economy advantage. And these are the kind of defenses that you need to go for if you're planning to take an advantage, right? If you plan to take an advantage in ZVZ, 10 workers is where it's at. He's going to be able to produce a ton more production, like anything right now, than his opponent will. And I would not be surprised, yeah, indeed, to see that lair go down. He's going to go for the Evolution Chamber follow-up as well. And he could be going for the +1 missile upgrade once again, as well as the Glio Reconstitution upgrade, which is the Roach Speed one, very, very, very shortly. Beautiful play here by Solar. Very, very impressed with him today. Now, that expansion of Dark, still very low. He is always forced to leave a couple of units at home, just in case of run-bys. He does not want to lose this base, but it looks like Dark is not quite done just yet. He's positioned a couple of Zerglings here to potentially go for a run-by into his opponent's natural. It is being shielded away for the moment. +1 missile is starting up right now as well, and Lair is just about to finish. Now, Dark has been making units here for a very long time. He's finally adding on more and more drones again, but He has been on a very massive economy deficit for a long time now. He's been desperately trying to go for the run-bys here, and he does manage to get a couple of units in here and there, but as far as the workers killed goes, he just has not been able to really break his opponent's army just yet, and it looks like he's just gonna go for one massive push. He's gonna be able to make a ton of units here, but the question is it enough? Because this, it looks very similar to the situation that we were in game number 2. Is it enough to break all of the economy that Solar has built up? And is he going to have enough here to deal with all of the forces that will be joining the battlefield very, very shortly? Because the reinforcing army for Solar will be significantly bigger. Nice little bit of kiting back here, trying to target fire down the banelings. This clump, though, is not very good here for Solar whatsoever, but the spine crawler in the third base has finished up, and he's desperately, Dark that is, he's desperately trying to take some potshots here at the expansion. Does manage to get a couple of nice corrosive biles here. Zerglings trying to go for the run by. Corrosive biles once again being used, but the army is shoving forward instead, not moving backwards, which is exactly what Dark was hoping to do, but he is forced to GG out of the game, and Solar ends up picking up the victory. Now, Zerg vs Zerg is most definitely one of the most complicated matchups in the game. It's very, very tricky to play, and I think Solar has just sort of mastered it. I mean, he has always been very, very good at Zerg vs Zerg, and while he did end up losing game number 1, it was mostly just due to a miss micro, right? He ran all of his links into one baneling, and that's all she wrote. But as far as strategy and drone timings go, I think there is a ton. Pretty much every single Zerg player in the world can learn from Solar, because he gets away with a lot more drones than many of his direct competitors do. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you have not already, make sure you hit that like button down below. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe, as well as follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The links are in the description. Other than that, I want to thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? And I will see you in the next one.